Hello and welcome to the Public's Voice. I'm your host, Marcus Atkinson. We're here live in studio with two special guests from two organizations that we've been talking about in this very unique partnership. The first being the Crime Victims Center, better known as CVC. And with that organization, we have Ms. Jaime Stoeger. Jaime, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
And with prevention specialist, Hector Rosa. Hector is a member of the Preferred Systems team. Hector, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, and so Jaime, we'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about your role at the CVC.
I am currently the Director of Court Advocacy. So basically my role is to supervise our court advocacy team. There are currently 9 members, 10 including me. We accompany victims to preliminary hearings, pleas, sentences, trials, PFAs. We also ensure that victims are given their rights, so that we make sure that they have the notifications, requests for restitution, and give them the chance to submit a letter to the judge prior to sentencing, their victim impact statement. And we actually just took on another staff her primary job is to attend prelims out in the county, which has been an area that we've not been able to get out to, so we have an advocate out in the county now as well. So that's that role. I'm also currently as well, I guess very recently, the appointed co-assistant director with another staff member. So basically we are there to take the reins and make sure everything runs smoothly if Paul, our executive director, is out of the office for a long extended period of time. So that's a new responsibility here in the past month or two that I've been given as well.
So for what you do, tell us the value of court advocacy on top of the many other things that you offer.
It's very important. The criminal justice system and the court process can be very confusing, and there's a lot going on. There's a lot of questions, and so really just us being there, all of our staff are very well versed in the system, and we have a very good working relationship with the district attorney's office and law enforcement. So it really enables us to, when we have somebody come in for a preliminary hearing, let's just say, and they're not quite sure what's going to happen, what's going on, we can sit down with them, say this is the process, these are the things that could happen, this is what the DA is going to talk to you about, and then we can go from there. So, if it moves on to trial, again, we can walk that through. And with us having the number of advocates we have at this point, we're able to really almost ensure that whoever you have at your preliminary hearing, you can then have it all the way through sentencing if you want. So that builds a relationship, and it gives the victim somebody they're comfortable with. And they can bounce thoughts and ideas off of, what they might want to see happen with their case. But the whole system, it can't. I mean, laws change, and there's so many changes constantly happening, and just the fact that we can keep up on that and just make sure victims are getting the best information possible and have that support system through that entire process. Because right now with COVID, it's even longer, but it's generally a good 9-month process from start to finish. So it's good to have that support for those victims.
Hector, your role as a prevention specialist at Preferred Systems, help us understand exactly what that role entails.
Well, the role entails getting together, engaging with students. It can go from first grade all the way to middle school, 8th grade. And what we do is engage with students that are, especially where the homes they come from, the environment they come from. A lot of teachers don't understand why their behaviors are up and down, why they're so aggressive, why it might be disrespectful. So what we do is we take those certain students in groups, get to know them better, see where their mind is at. We also teach a curriculum that's for bullying, for gambling, for drugs, and getting to teach them from young what's good and bad, and understanding why they might see, people in their environment, friends, family, why they do certain things, why things don't make sense. Just basically giving them knowledge, but as well as giving them a voice, understanding them, where they come from, what they deal with day in, day out. Sometimes these kids go to school and that's the only way out. And when us as adults don't understand where they're coming from or how they feel, why they feel that way, that's when we come in and try to put things in perspective and try to know or understand what's going on with the students, and also teach, in small group settings.
So a common denominator, but with both of your positions, with both of these agencies in particular, but a common denominator seems to be trust. Okay, so Jamie, let's just starting with you, be it court advocacy and some of the other things that you offer. How much is trust key in your agency's work?
Oh, it's very key. I mean, especially on the counseling side, court advocacy might be a little bit more short term, but when you have the counseling side, you have people coming in for months and months trying to work through, whatever it is that happened to them, and knowing that they can come in and form a relationship with somebody, and really, at some point, start sharing some very deep and very traumatic things that happened to them, and knowing that that person is going to be there and help them and help them process that. And even with the adults we have coming, teaching them new life skills, because maybe they don't have those. That's kind of an ongoing thing sometimes, and learning why they, I don't want to say we're put in this situation, but why what happened to them, help them process that if you can come up with that answer and work through that. And even with court, you have a complete stranger coming in, and we need to be able to go in there and in a matter of 30 seconds kind of form some sort of relationship with them and go, we're going to do everything we can to help you. And, a lot of it's honesty, what may or may not happen. But the more that you can form that relationship, whether it be very quickly in court or over time in counseling, it gives people a little bit more sense of security and hope that things will get better for them and maybe just get better overall, that there are people out there that despite everything are trying to help. So it's very key, absolutely.
Hector, talk about that word when it comes to your profession, trust. What does that mean for Preferred Systems in the work?
Trust is huge, especially, like I said previously, that with students coming in, if you can't relate to them, they don't even want to know your name. When you talk, the way you talk and express yourself, it's huge, because you can have a student that's shut down, won't do anything, call their parents, pick them up, misbehaving, yelling, cussing, whatever it might be. When they have somebody and feel and hear somebody speak their language in a short term, it's huge. If they can't get something situated in their work, in the classroom, somebody bugging them, they know who they can trust and bring them back to where they're supposed to be, feeling, learning, all that.
I want to read a couple of facts, excuse me, from the Mental Health Association. Because if you're listening and you think about especially some of the work that Hector and his team is doing with Preferred Systems, and even some of the things that the CVC is going after with young people, there's this misconception that some of life's most pressing issues start settling in when they get to a certain age. Nothing could be further from the truth. So the Mental Health Association released a couple of facts here that I wanted to state. One, 20% of youth ages 13 to 18 live with a mental health condition. 11% of youth have a mood disorder. 10% of youth have a behavior or conduct disorder. 8% of youth have an anxiety disorder. And this is another fact that I really want to key in on for a second. Third, suicide is the third leading cause of death in youth ages 10 to 24. 10 to 24. 90% of those who died by suicide had an underlying mental health issue. And so when you think about statistics like that, and you think about some of the youth that you deal with, you mentioned gambling, which actually is an issue for kids this age as well. Gambling and bullying and some of these life decision issues. The problems from home follow these kids to school, and you're interfacing with that on a daily basis. Talk about that a little bit.
There's kids that don't even sleep at night. They don't even have a proper bed. They come from homes that are constantly busy, being partying, being smoking, being something that's a negative, it's negative energy on them. They come to the school and they try to, sometimes, there's so many situations, but sometimes they try to bring that atmosphere, that environment to the school, because that's all they're learning at home. So we have to bring them down, talk to them, have them open up, and hear them. And when you hear what they're talking about, it's not their fault, it's really how they're being brought up. There's different situations, not to go into details. So what we try to do is, once again, earn that trust. Second, hear them out and see how we can redirect the direction that's heading at home, bring them, redirect their mindset and help them understand they're not bad kids. They're not, the way they're thinking, just bring them back into engaging with the positivity that's going on.
Well, this is where people like Hector have their hands tied because, on the one hand, you've earned their trust and you're helping these students kind of process what they're seeing and hearing and the baggage that they're bringing to school. On the other hand, your hands are tied because there's a whole clinical piece that really needs to be addressed that is not the wheelhouse that your team operates in. Enter an organization like the CVC.
Yep.
Talk about some of the things that are offered for an agency like yours to address the clinical needs of people that suffer in ways that some of Hector's clients do.
Yeah, obviously, the people we're seeing on top of anything that might be going on, we do have, quite a few kids come in. There was some sort of victimization at some point. So I will argue that majority of those people, because of that, have some sort of mental health. Maybe minor, maybe bigger than that. But as they're working with our counselors, the counselors are trained, they have certifications. They can say, okay, we think you might need something maybe a little bit more, and we can get out and we can refer to other agencies that might be able to help on top of what we're doing, address the underlying mental health. I think anybody in this job can tell you that if you have there's chaos at home or you do have underlying mental health, you can't address that's not getting addressed. You can't address the issues at hand that we're trying to work on. So it's really important, whether it's through the school or through a mental health agency, that we're seeing this. Go to them. Let's see what we can do for you on that end of it, so then we can really start processing. Because you can have us coming in and, preferred systems coming in and whoever else coming in, but if they're not, I guess, building that foundation for mental health and building that foundation of good life skills, that all of that's going to be a moot point. The goal really is to get these kids to a healthy mindset so they can, I guess, break the cycle, for lack of a better way, and move out of that and not make, have their kids going through that same process. Because you're right. They're living what they know and what they've learned at home. So it's important to have those community collaborations and really all kind of work together. It takes a village. And that's what we really try to do.
So I want to touch on the cultural aspect of this with Hector real quick, because in general, statistically speaking, African Americans, the Latinx community across the board, mental health counseling in general is just not something embraced per se by these communities. Help people listening understand that to the best of your ability, that in these communities, it may be commonplace in some. Like, I've got white friends and associates where it is just a part of their routine. And I don't say that facetiously. I've taken advantage of counseling and still do off and on. I've learned to appreciate it. But that demographic grew up just understanding, hey, sometimes you need to go and process that. Our cultures don't look at it that way.
No, our culture is. I'm Hispanic, Puerto Rican, and what we call is machismo. It's the tough guy thing. It's you're weak if you're going to talk to somebody, and the thing is, some of us don't know any better. We fall into the trap of. The kids fall into the trap, even adults, into the social media, into videos, into songs that are inappropriate, but that makes them feel a certain way. So it's a fantasy that's not gonna do anything but just make it worse for the students, and that's what they go by. So if they say, I want to talk to my teacher, I want to talk to a counselor, like they want to talk to Mr. Rosa at school, some parents are saying no, or some uncles, some aunts, some cousins, some friends are saying that's weak. And all reality is these kids realize something isn't right. And if you feel like you need to talk to a counselor, a therapist, go right ahead. I do it. I do research. to understand why is it so hard to, for some people to reach that extra help. There's nothing wrong with that. As a minority and being around, a lot of negative vibes that, hey, no, you don't do that. This is how we do things. And you go by that advice when you're a young teenager, it's leading to nothing but a bigger headache. So if, especially us like minorities, if we can find the help, go for it. There's nothing wrong with that. It'll lead to great things. If we stay stuck, all we doing is not even breaking the cycle,
Right.
and our family and generations are going to be stuck.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's funny because for myself, there was a self-destruct button that for whatever reason I would just keep hitting that self-destruct button. Things would be going fine, hit that self-destruct button. And at some point, I said, why am I repeating the same behavior? And you keep getting the same result. And I can understand what you're saying about machismo. In the African-American community, going back to slavery, to Jim Crow and everything, our people have had to deal with so much. It's just like, you know what? You learn to just kind of suck it up and keep it moving. But this baggage collects. And so, Jamie, as I go back to you, as you hear this conversation, this has been kind of the impetus of this partnership between Preferred Systems and CVC in the first place.
Yes.
Traditionally, you've struggled to get into these types of communities.
We have, yep. Yeah, I think, in terms of criminal justice, I think it's a fairly even playing field. If you're victimized, we're there. But actually getting any minority group, African American, Hispanic, immigrant, refugee, into the agency for counseling has absolutely been a struggle. By into the agency, I just mean us working with them, whether it's we're going into a different area or not. We do have some partnerships right now that unfortunately have been hit by COVID. So that's hard. And I think where we have struggled is being able to gain that trust in those communities, and especially with immigrant refugee, maybe even helping them realize what is happening to them is a victimization. And again, kind of breaking what their beliefs are in their culture as to what's appropriate and not appropriate, and helping them understand that what may have happened in your country may have been normal, it may have been socially acceptable, but here it's not. And we want to make sure that you're safe and that you're healthy and that you have a good experience in this country, and you left wherever for that reason, for whatever reason, and we just want to make sure that you're getting the most that you can out of this. So it really definitely has been difficult for us to break into certain demographics, and so absolutely that's a big reason for this partnership, is to be able to do that.
Our first conversation was with the CEO of Preferred Systems and the executive director, Michael Chevalier of Preferred Systems, and the executive director of the Crime Victim Center, Paul Lukac. And they talked a lot about just how valuable this partnership is for the reasons that you are outlining. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting when it comes to collaboration and community. Oftentimes you're looking for kind of the yin to your yang in order to make progress in a certain area. I think when it comes to agencies, there's so much pride, and people tend to want to swerve out of their lane in order to try to capture something that they just aren't good at or aren't equipped to do. Yes. This, Hector, I have you speak to it first. This, to me, feels like a good fit because some of the students that I know you have a personal connection to, mm-hmm. there's an extra tool in your toolbox that you can now offer to help them cross over into a healthier version of themselves.
Correct. It works well. It's great because, now that we have this collaboration, I can, enforce there is help, there is a way out, that mentality. There's counseling involved, not only in the school, but outside of the school. And it's a great feeling to know that we have this collaboration. And once again, as a minority, I can relate more than a white American. And getting that trust and students feeling that confident and comfortable to talk to us and believing that I could help them or we can help them as an agency, it's a great feeling.
Mm-hmm. I want to take you back to something you said a second ago when you talked about what they're learning from home sometimes and what they're hearing from home sometimes. And, when you walked into the studio, the first thing I asked you was, Pastor Rosa, your father. For many of us, the guidance and the advice that we get from mom, dad, uncle, aunt, grandparents, you know, you can almost take for granted that every child is getting that same kind of guidance. And nothing could be further from the truth. And sometimes I remember being a director at the YMCA Teen Center, making home visits, and the most challenging child was the rock star in his or her household. I'm like, you're the one with the most potential. But give us a sense of some of these kids without getting specific, because we know there's confidentiality issues. Sure. But just give us a sense of how you become personally and emotionally invested in the success of these students.
Well, it starts when you get to talk to them. They don't even want to look at you, you know. They don't want to look at you. You don't know what they go through day in and day out, once again. And as time goes along and they're getting comfortable with you, and you're seeing, you know, not to be so long on this, but their grades come up. The teachers are engaging with them more because they don't have this negative attitude. They're not bringing this negative energy. It's wonderful. I mean, I had 1 year, I left on vacation, and there was graduation for 5th grade. And I was interacting with a group of students, and 2 of them, middle of the graduations, it made me feel very good. They had a speech, like they could say something about a teacher or something. And they mentioned, my name was the only one mentioned, and saying, I thank you, Mr. Hector, for making me understand, for making me, you know, believe that I can do better in school, that I can, you know, collab with my parents more, respect my siblings, all those positive things. And that right there is a huge payoff. When you see the big difference day in day, you see that they're trying, and they start seeing what's right and what's wrong. And they start believing in themselves versus believing in somebody else that hasn't taken them nowhere. So I think that right there speaks volumes.
Jamie, as we talk about court advocacy, people go to court for various reasons. The one thing that you will notice when you go to a courtroom or the waiting room outside a courtroom, I don't care what people are there for, they're nervous. Yep. They're stressed about the appearance. Oftentimes something has transpired that's altered their existence. Yes. Maybe it's injected an extra ounce of fear into their day-to-day routine. They've been violated. You catch people at their most vulnerable moments in that respect. Yes. Give us an idea of kind of one of your memorable moments, again, without getting specific, but just to give people an idea of what it feels like to really come alongside of someone in these sensitive moments.
There's so many. I think just an overwhelming theme that you see somebody, you know, people process things differently. And when you're, especially in central court, which the prelims are, you could at some point have 5 to 6 cases going at once. And sometimes you kind of zero in on that one person. They're just not looking quite, just looking a little bit more nervous. But when you go in and you're able to, you know, sit with them in a room and talk to them, and, you know, they're nervous and they're shaking and they're crying and they're emotional. And I see this a lot with domestic violence cases. You know, it's a stressful situation. And you just, there's a moment of I guess maybe clarity with them, or just a moment of calm as you're talking to them and talking to them through them with, you know, with what happened and you know, how do they move on from this? Can they move on from this? And just knowing, you know, a lot of times, you know, people are walking out and you get a hug, like, just thank you for being here and supporting me, regardless of what happens in court or any of that. It's just a moment of, I thought I was alone in all of this, and there you guys are, just sitting with me for 15 minutes and explaining everything and being there and letting me know that, like, I can go here, I can come to you at CVC if I need anything else. And just seeing the relief when people walk out, again, regardless of what the outcome is, of, you know, there are people here who are going to support me and who are going to be there for me. And it's, you know, there's a lot of, I think, sometimes distrust in the system and how things work and how things are processed. And you hear that a lot, like, I don't trust the system. I don't trust any of you. Okay, that's fine. What are we going to do to fix that in this time that we have together? And you can do that. And you have those moments, there's a person, there's always just somebody in your head that you had that breakthrough with them. And then, you have somebody else come in, well, so-and-so said they worked with you and you were really good and you were supportive and what have you, so I'm coming to you directly. You know what I mean? So it happens. Word of mouth is an amazing thing, and if you can build that connection with a few people, they're going to tell their families, they're going to tell their friends, they're going to tell their neighbors, this is where you need to go and this is what you need to do. So I think, in the long term, you seeing that and hearing that from people is really just, it's the catalyst of, okay, we're doing what we're here to do, and we are making that difference despite everything.
So as we close, Hector, the longer you do this, does it make you want to kind of double down on your efforts to help being a contributing towards being a contributing factor to a healthier community?
Oh yes, yes. I when you see the difference when you're working with students, sometimes their parents are calling you and trying to figure out, or even thank you, because they're seeing it's, yes, double down all day, 100%. The payoff is huge for me, seeing the difference that can happen in the community, seeing the big difference as far as being minorities. I mean, it's huge, and they can use the support and help and always have somebody they can confide on and relate to, because I can relate to a lot of things as in the community, what they're going through, what these young kids are going through, what they're thinking, what their thought process, what they're seeing. It's great. It's great, and I wouldn't stop.
Hector Rosa from Preferred Systems. Hector, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Jaime Stoeger from the Crime Victims Center, the CVC. Jaime, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
This is one of the reasons that we're very excited about this collaboration. It is so easy to get caught up in the economic landscape of Erie and the economic remake of Erie, and certainly all of that is 100% necessary. We need a strong economy. We need for people to come here and spend money. But it will all be for naught if we don't address the soul of the community. Partnerships like this do just that. They give us an opportunity to look into the eyes of Erie for who we really are, for who they really are, and say, how can we make you as a city, individual by individual, better? And that is priceless. Absolutely priceless. So thank you both so much for what you do for your respective agencies, and thank you so much for the genuine care and concern that you bring into these positions. And it's beyond just a job. The fact that you handle this as a calling speaks volumes. I'm Marcus Atkinson. Thank you so much for listening to The Public's Voice, and we'll get an opportunity to analyze more issues with more guests next time. Until then, take care.